waiting for this call, which is super exciting. I think, Mark, we had over 650 people pre-register for this.
Fantastic.
Which is a new record for live events here at the admin bar. So
great.
It's pretty exciting.
Good stuff.
Just waiting here for confirmation on my end to see this actually going live. And it looks like I can see our smiling faces on there. We're good. So if everybody here in the chat will just let us know if they can hear us all right, we'll make sure we got that before we get too far into this. Let's see. We got Jerry and Gigi and Trisha and Charlie and Sarah. Lots of people. Kim's here in Pennsylvania, Long Island. Some fellow Virginia folks here. Virginians in the house. Sounds good. Video and sound is good. Excellent.
Loud and clear.
That's great. That's always good to hear. You know how many times I've worried about just starting this and then having a panic that nobody could hear the whole thing. So, all right. Well, we'll jump into this. I'm going to give just a minute for people to join us here as the notifications go out for everybody. But I just want to start things by saying a huge thanks to Mark for all the time he's put into this. The research he's done, like on the history of SMTP, which is amazing. Not only that, but
I think last time we did this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, we're back.
Oh, it froze on me there for a second.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we'll be okay now. Get the bugs out of the way, right?
Yeah.
But as I was saying, Mark went above and beyond for this. He researched the history of SMTP and all the different providers and their pricing and all kinds of things here, which is pretty awesome. We got a really cool presentation for you and a cool blog post to go along with it. And I am pretty confident here. The amount of times we've had conversations about getting emails to work on websites inside the group over the past 5 years, it's a lot. And I have a feeling that this webinar is going to knock that out for once and for all, which is super exciting.
We hope so.
Yes, I have confidence. All right. Well, we got 88 people here. So let's get this thing on the road.
Cool.
So welcome, everybody. Like I said, today we're going to be tackling SMTP and getting forms and transactional emails to work on your website. I know this has come up a ton inside of our community. Mark also said it's one of the most common support requests he gets for his plugin WS Form. So I know a lot of people have challenges with this. We had 650 people or so subscribe to watch this webinar. So I know this is a problem a lot of people run into. And I think I was going to say between the two of us, but mostly Mark, have come up with a good way to go through all this and make sure that it's fairly easy for us to follow. So before we jump into that, Mark, I just want to say thank you. And I want to give you an opportunity to kind of tell us a little bit about yourself before we jump in here.
Sure. Mark Westguard. I'm the founder of WS Form, which is a WordPress form plugin. And as Cole mentioned, we have a lot of customers wondering why their emails aren't sending. Not just from our product, but from WordPress in general. So hopefully today we can give you some good tips, hopefully clear the air on what some of these terms mean and get you up and running. And give you a process for doing this every time that just makes it easy.
Yep. And like I said, we're going to go through a demo on getting all this set up as well and talk about even how you can set all this up for your clients. I know most people watching this are servicing clients. Believe me, if this is something a bunch of us as web developers are struggling with, giving this over to clients to handle is a terrible idea. So being able to handle this for your clients, I think, is a huge value add. So I'm going to share your screen here, Mark. Let's see. I think I can do that. Let's see. Nope, that's not it. That's not it.
More emphasis on you.
There we go. No, we don't want a big me in there. So Mark, we got a couple slides to look at before we jump into the demo here, but I guess I want to just start things off by saying, you know, I remember when I first signed up for my own WordPress hosting, got my own first site really up and running on a WordPress.org site, self-hosted, and I had a HostGator account, and I thought I was, you know, living high, doing everything right there. And I didn't have to set up anything separate for my email. In fact, I even set up clients' correspondence emails, you know, through the web server and all that. Forms were sending through my website without me doing any kind of intervention or setting anything else up. After time, I realized that I was having some emails not going through, things ending up in spam, clients not realizing that they were getting a bunch of requests that they couldn't see. So I guess out of the box, WordPress comes with ways to handle mail without involving SMTP. So let's start there. Like, how does that work just out of the box with WordPress? and then we can talk about why maybe it's not the perfect solution.
Sure. And the reason it used to work was your email provider, the people that you get your email from, didn't really care where that email came from back in the day. And over the years, it's become they've become more and more diligent. They want to make sure the email you're receiving isn't spam. They want to make sure it's coming from the right place. So the way email generally is sent from WordPress is through a little function called WP Mail. And WP Mail is actually a function, it's a wrapper for a piece of software called PHP Mailer. And essentially what that piece of software does is it's responsible for sending email out of your website into the internet, and hopefully it's going to be received at the other end. The problem is that WP Mail will send email in a very raw format. It's literally going to be, okay, to address, from address, here's your subject line, here's your message, and that's it, and off it goes, and it hopes for the best. SMTP is SMTP stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. It's a very old standard. It dates back to the 80s, but it's not very resilient. It doesn't know if an email has reached the other end. It doesn't do anything to kind of identify itself and make sure it is who it should be. So at the other end, at your inbox, normally it's going to go, I don't know where this email's come from. I don't trust it, and it's going to get rid of it, or it's going to end up in your spam. So the two things that usually happen that we hear from customers is, hey, my emails aren't being received, and that's usually because your inbox provider has just said, not going to accept this email, or it's in their spam folder. So you need a better way of being able to send email from WordPress. And there's a little bit of confusion about the two things that you need for this. So we're going to go through that and explain how that works. Yeah. So this ideally is the situation that you're looking for. This is where you want to get to. So rather than send an email directly from WordPress to somebody, you're going to involve two key components. There's going to be the SMTP plugin, and there's going to be an SMTP service that you use. So let's explain the difference between those two. Let's start with the SMTP service first of all. So what that is designed to do, that's designed to make sure that when an email is sent,
looks like we got another frozen frame here. Hopefully that comes back quickly. We'll give Mark a second here. Hopefully y'all can still hear me okay. While we wait for that connection to steady back up, I guess one of the things I wanted to
modify it such that when it's received on the other end. Oh, and we're back.
We lost you there for a second. Hopefully this reestablishes pretty quickly. What I was just kind of explaining to folks here while things were frozen up is, if you're just using the default way emails come out of WordPress without any kind of intervention through SMTP, the symptoms you might see that tell you have a problem are emails just not showing up or emails showing up to spam. And you know, some inboxes, some providers, Gmail, whoever's receiving the email on the other end, they might just stuff those into spam, or they might be so unauthenticated that they just reject them completely. So it looks like your website's not even sending the email. Well, it's sending the email, but just nobody wants to receive it, right? Because it's wrapped in wrapping paper that says spam all over it, right? So everybody rejects it. So if you're running into those issues where it seems like your website's not sending out the emails, then it could very well be that type of problem. So I know we were just jumping in here into the way SMTP works a little bit differently. There's the plugin side and the service side, and I think you were just starting to tell us about the service side when stuff froze up.
Of course, technology fails you when you need it, right?
Of course.
Yeah, so the SMTP service will be a third party, such as Mailgun or SendGrid or something like that, and we'll go through those in a moment, that basically takes your email, wraps it in a lot of goodness, and sends it on to the recipient. And there's a lot of technology involved in that, which we're not going to go into today, because you'd need another 2-3 hours for that. But essentially what that will do, it's accepting email from WordPress in one of two ways. It's either doing it through SMTP, so it's actually receiving it as a raw email, or some of these SMTP services, or pretty much all of them, now offer an API. And the advantage of the API is that it has things such as error checking or logging, or the ability to switch on things like email open rate tracking or click tracking. So in order to send your email from WordPress to that SMTP service, you're going to need an SMTP plugin. So that's the second part of this. And some of the SMTP services, such as Mailgun, such as Postmark, they actually provide an SMTP plugin that you can install in WordPress. It makes the process very, very simple compared to what it used to be a few years ago. And there are also some third-party SMTP plugins, such as Fluent SMTP or WP Mail SMTP. And those enable you to connect to a multitude of different SMTP services that are out there. We're going to show you a few today, a few plugins and a few services, but bear in mind, there are tons of them out there. And you probably want to research the best one that suits you.
Yeah. I know one of the questions we had several, we asked people to submit any questions they had, and then things that have come up in the group is a lot of times I think there's confusion on there being two parts to the SMTP equation here, right? Because some of the questions we got were like, do I really need to go pay for Mailgun if I can download the Fluent SMTP plugin off the repo, right? And I think the main thing I wanted to make sure we got across here is those are serving two different functions. That the plugin is just to connect to a service. So you have to have a service to actually run it through. Now, there are even some of these big companies that have free plans up to so many emails processed per day or per month, however it is. So there are some ways, if your website's small enough, not sending a ton of emails, that you can actually do this completely for free with all free tools. But you do need the service as well as the plugin, not just one or the other.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And I just saw in the comments someone mentioning that their hosting provider actually blocks email. So some hosting providers won't even let you send raw email out. So that's, again, why you need a setup like this in order to be able to send email efficiently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so
yeah, I was going to say, so I know a bunch of these names come up. Mailgun seems to be the one that I hear people talk about most. SendGrid comes up a ton. Postmark is my personal favorite, and what I twisted Mark's arm into demonstrating for us today. But tell us a little bit about how these services differ and benefits, kind of pros and cons of these different options.
Sure. Most of these are actually very, very similar nowadays. They all offer an efficient way of sending email. They charge you, usually, there's a rate per 1,000 emails. Mailgun, Postmark, SendGrid, SMTP.com, they are fully fledged SMTP solutions that are very easy to set up. It's kind of point and click, go through the steps and set it up online. Again, we're going to show you Postmark today, just as an example. We don't have time to go through every one, but the demo we're going to show you is very similar on these other services as well. Amazon SES, which is Amazon Simple Email Service, provides the same service. It's just a little bit more technical. It's a little bit more involved in setting it up, but it is the cheapest out there. So I believe to send 1,000 emails, we're looking at, let's have a look.
Thank you.
10 cents. Yeah, so super cheap. But again, you are going to have to do a little bit more technical setup with that. So it's a little bit more complicated because they have like user roles and all this kind of stuff going on. Whereas the Mailguns, the Postmarks, the SendGrids, the SMTP.coms, much easier to set up. The pricing on them is pretty similar. It really varies and it depends on how many emails you're going to be sending. On the blog article that we've put together for this, we've actually listed some of that pricing for you, so you can see that. And we've done it basically up to, I think we did it from about 10,000 emails, just to give you an idea. You can send millions of emails with these services if you want. But have a look at each of them, see which one works for you price-wise. And also bear in mind, and Carl will go through this later on, just bear in mind with the types of clients that you've got, how many emails you think you're going to be sending with those clients in the long term. Because these things can add up. If you're predominantly business to business, you're probably going to be sending a handful of emails a day. If you're doing something like e-commerce, you could be looking at tens of thousands of emails a day. So just bear that in mind price-wise.
Yeah, that was something hard for me when I was shopping at these different providers. It's like, oh, well, I have no idea how many emails I need. So yesterday, me and Mark jumped on a call, and I was looking in my Postmark account. I have quite a few clients on there, maybe 20 or so clients in my Postmark account. I've used 600 and something emails in the last month, right? So I have a 10,000 email limit. I'm not coming anywhere close to that. Now, the businesses that I have on there are, like you said, B2B. It's really like people filling out their contact form or the occasional like WordPress update notification or whatever it may be. But if you have something like e-commerce, you you place an order, people get a order confirmation email. They get a email with the receipt. They get an email when it's been marked shipped. They might get another email later. Like those things can really add up. So if you're not doing e-commerce stuff, those numbers are going to be a lot lower, but you will have to have kind of a sense of what types of sites you're building.
Yeah, and each of these services, apart from Amazon SES, does actually have a free tier as well. So some of them you'll get 5,000 emails a month. Some of them you get 100 a month. So check that out as well. So if you're just starting out with this, you can probably get away with a free tier to start off with. And the likes of like Amazon SES as well, some of the advantages with that is that you can set up a dedicated IP address for the emails that are being sent, whereas the other services, you're typically on a shared IP. So you could potentially be impacted by other people, but they're pretty good at keeping tabs on these things nowadays. So if somebody is sending huge amounts of spam, that particular customer will get blocked and they'll discontinue their service. So they're getting better and better at tracking this kind of stuff. On the whole, the services I've used, I've never had that problem. I've never had an IP address get blacklisted. So it's quite rare that will happen. But obviously much better than sending email directly from your own server that's not even getting there. So yeah, just take a look at these different services. Again, this is just a small sample of what's out there.
Absolutely. And I will talk a little bit later about, bundling all this together in your service offering as far as clients and how all those kinds of things add up. Because once you start talking about multiple clients and hundreds of emails, those things do add up, and picking something that's not only going to be affordable and cost effective for you to use, but it's going to be easy to log into one place and kind of manage all this stuff, I think is important too. Because if you're anything like me, you don't want to spend your day dealing with all this. I think next we're going to jump into some of the demo stuff, but I did see a couple questions here we'll tackle just while we're at it. We had somebody ask if we're going to talk about setting up all the new DMARC requirements here. So we are going to, as part of this demo, in connecting a SMTP provider and the records you'll need for them to be able to send emails that are authenticated on your behalf. But that's also a bigger topic on, this is one thing we're connecting to email on your domain, right? You also have your actual email, and you might connect a proposal software or this or that. So we're not going to tackle DMARC as a whole, but as far as what's has to be considered here when you're setting all this SMTP stuff up. So yeah, definitely wanted to touch on that. And it looks like people are making a few suggestions on some things that might even be cheaper than Amazon SES. So if you're very price sensitive, there's definitely options out there for you.
Check those comments. Yeah.
Yeah.
These are some of the SMTP plugins that you can install. So some of those SMTP services have a native plugin that goes with them, which makes it really easy to set up. So the Postmark demo, again, we're not affiliated with Postmark. We're not making any money from this. It's just one that Kyle likes. That one has a native plugin that you can install and makes the whole process super simple. There are other SMTP plugins out there that you can use, such as Fluent SMTP, Post SMTP, WP Mail SMTP. I put a web address at the top right-hand side of this slide. If you just go to the plugin repo and do a search for SMTP, you will find tons of them. And most of those will connect to multiple different SMTP services. So again, super easy to set up now. There's a wealth of plugins out there that enable you to do this. So this is the first part of that process, and then you've got the SMTP services. So just bear in mind those are two different things.
Right. So if you're going to use something like Mailgun or Postmark that has a dedicated plugin, just use their plugin. Yeah. But if you're using something that doesn't have a dedicated plugin, I know Fluent SMTP connects to a ton of them. That's just one that I know that I've used before. So if you install one of those that connects to multiple, they'll have lots of options in there for you, so you can connect to whatever service makes sense or whatever you're using.
I'd say the only advantage of maybe using something like Fluent SMTP or WP Mail SMTP is they do have some pretty good logging processes and stuff in there. So they may have some additional functionality that may be helpful to you. But usually setting this stuff up, you set it up and you forget about it. You don't want to go back to it again. But if you find that you're having trouble sending email out, then that logging can be helpful. That's also an advantage of using these SMTP services. They will give you feedback on if you're getting bounce backs or if email's not going through properly or anything like that. The logging can be really helpful for diagnosing problems with emails not sending.
Yeah, we can show that too. The Postmark plugin has that right inside your dashboard where you can see every email, what's gone through, if it was delivered, the status, all those kinds of things. So that's definitely helpful when you're troubleshooting, when your client says, these emails aren't working. And then you see, oh, well, your client's opened all of the emails, so they're definitely working.
Yeah, only one didn't go through.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I think that's something to bear in mind as well, is that this is part of the process. It's a big part of getting an email from A to B. But you've also got to bear in mind that even using these services, an email could be considered spam at the other end. So if somebody were to send you maybe an inquiry on the form and happens to use a word that your spam filter doesn't like, it could still end up in your spam folder. So one of the things that we sometimes recommend is whitelist the email address of where your emails are coming from. So if you're using email@domain.com, you could whitelist that in your inbox, and that would make sure all those emails always come through.
Yeah, if you're in the gambling niche, you might have trouble getting all your emails come through. So whitelist those addresses.
Yeah, or insurance.
Yeah, insurance. I can think of a few of them.
Yeah. All right.
Well, sweet. Let's go in here and demo. Like Mark said, when we started talking about this, I kind of twisted his arm into using Postmark. I've used several of these, including I've used Mailgun quite a bit. Once I found Postmark, I think when I got on the 10,000 email plan was $10, so I save a little bit now. I think it's $15. But man, the service has just been rock solid, and it's so easy to set up. Like once I've set this up, as you'll see, you kind of set it up one time and you're done. And that's pretty easy for me and what I like, because I don't want to be in here messing with this all the time. So I asked Mark if he would kind of demo setting this up. So hopefully we can show you how easy that is. Now, we did have to go in here and set up an account already, because there is a registration process and all that. It takes a little bit of time for your account to get set up. So we'll be able to show you kind of the first half of that. We'll tell you where that kind of waiting period is, and then we can actually finish the rest of the demo here.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
we'll give it a go. So Postmark is owned by ActiveCampaign, which you may know. ActiveCampaign is an email marketing SaaS service, and you don't actually need an ActiveCampaign account to use this service. It's an independent service. I don't think you need to sign up for their email marketing service. You can use this in isolation for getting your emails sent. So first step is signing up to this service. I'm not going to bother signing up here. I've already got an account, but simple case of putting your name, your email address. I usually set my username up as my email just to make it easier, but you can use whatever you like. Put your secure password in there, and then off you go. That's going to basically get you to this step here once you've validated your email address, and you're ready to go. So there are two key parts in Postmark in their service that you need to be concerned with. The first is sender signatures, and the second is server. So we'll go through server signatures first and explain how that works. So a server signature is essentially you validating your domain name or a domain name with Postmark. You can use the domain name for your website if you want. So if you want your emails to come from whatever your site name is, .com, or whatever your TLD is, or you can use the specific domain name if you want. So if you want to use a separate domain name for your email send, you can do that too. Most of the time, you're just going to use the domain name that's used for your website. So first of all, we're going to click on Add Domain or Signature at the top right-hand side here. And Postmark gives you two options. You can either set it up under a domain, which means you can send an email from any address at yourdomainname.com, or you can actually set it up to only authorize email coming from a single email address on your domain. 99% of the time, you're going to want to use just the domain option. That means that in future, you can set it up to send emails from other email addresses under that same domain name. So you may have like sales, support, whatever you want to do in future. So let's do that.
Yeah, and let me comment on that real quick, because
Sure.
I know there was confusion in that, like, well, I don't have an email at theadminbar.com email address, right? I don't have that inbox. Do I need to go out and buy that inbox? What's nice about a service like this, and if you set it up through this domain route, you can make up email addresses, right? It doesn't need to be something you've purchased an inbox for. You don't have to go into your G Suite account and add a new user in it and pay $6 a month or whatever. You could just make up as many of these as you need to. As long as you have this domain authenticated, which we're fixing to do here in a second, you can set these up whatever you need them to be. It doesn't have to be a real inbox. And then you can set up a reply to address and all that. So if somebody replies to one of those emails, it gets to you. But don't get hung up on the idea that you need to go out and purchase another inbox. As long as you have a domain, even if you don't have any email associated with that domain, you don't have to have email registered at all on that domain. You can set this up.
Yep. So we're going to add a domain. We have bought a domain name for the purposes of this. So you're just going to type your domain name, click in verify domain, and that is going to bring you back. So let me just show you where it's going to take you to this screen here. Now, this screen here is probably the most complicated part of the process. But once you've got this done, you're going to be golden. So there's two things that you need to do. There's basically two DNS entries that we need to add to the domain name. There's a record, which is a TXT type. And there's also a CNAME as well. So the first one is the DKIM record. The second one is a return path. So the return path is basically set up so that if an email bounces back, it will be bounced back to that email address. And that tells Postmark whether an email has been successful or not. And that in turn can then give you logs and information about how efficiently your emails are being sent. We're not going to go into DKIM right now, but it's basically a way of helping ensure that your email reaches its destination efficiently. So in order to set these two DNS records up, you're going to have to go into the DNS for your domain name, which may or may not be with the people that you've registered your domain name with, but typically it is. And then you will add these two records. So I'm going to show you very quickly how that is done with GoDaddy, just as an example. So this is my DNS page in GoDaddy on the right-hand side. And what we're going to do is add a new record. And basically, the nice thing about Postmark is you can just click on host name or value and it will copy it to your clipboard. So we'll just take the host name here. And first of all, we're going to choose the type. Sorry, we're going to choose TXT for this record. And then under the name, we're going to put the host name. So we'll paste that in. And then we're going to copy that value, put that in the value here. The TTL, which is time to live, don't worry about that. Just leave that as it is. And then you're going to click on save to save that record. Once you've done that, you're going to do the same again for the return path. So you're going to choose CNAME, and then you're going to take that host name there and put that in name. And then under the value, we're going to take that value there and put that in there. Now, I'm not going to click save on this because I've actually already got these records in so that you guys aren't sitting here for 10 minutes while we wait for the DNS to propagate. So the thing to bear in mind is once you've added these records, there's going to be a small period of time where that propagates around the world and Postmark can then pick up those records. So these records serve two purposes. First of all, it enables Postmark to validate that you or verify that you own that domain name, so they're happy to work with you. And then secondly, it's about improving that deliverability. So once you've put those records in under normal circumstances, you're going to see a verify button here on the right-hand side. And you click that verify button and it's going to come up and say verified on those two there. So that, again, that may take 5-10 minutes. So if you don't see it happening immediately, go and get yourself a coffee, come back, hit that verify button, and you should be good to go. So that's us basically now set up a sender signature for your domain name. That now means that Postmark is happy to send emails under that domain name on your behalf. The next thing you want to do is we now need to set up a server. So it's quite funny. The documentation in Postmark says we wish we'd never called it servers. Really what this is, it's kind of like a folder. It's a collection of emails that are sent through a particular what they call a server. Really easy to set up. So what we're going to do is click on create server. In here, we're going to give it a name. So I'm just going to call it tab smtp.com. If you use that convention, if you're adding lots and lots of clients to this, by giving it the domain name, you're going to be able to easily identify these. So I wouldn't call it something like my SMTP or my email. Make sure it's associated with the website you're going to be sending stuff. Always choose yellow for the admin bar. You can choose whatever color you want. And we want that server to be live because we're actually going to be using that for production purposes. Then we click create server. And we're now brought to the dashboard for that particular server. Now, the types of emails that we're sending from WordPress, they're pretty much all transactional. So they are login notifications, or it could be a registration notification, an e-commerce order, a payment accepted, product delivered, all these kinds of things, and also form submissions as well. So we're interested in the transactional stream in this particular server. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to API tokens at the top. So you see the tabs at the top here. Click on API tokens, and there's the API token that we've got for this particular server. Now, the API token is used to connect WordPress to Postmark. So we're going to copy that token just by clicking on it again. Super easy. And now we're going to go into your WordPress website and set up the SMTP plugin. So we've done the SMTP service, and now we're going to set up that SMTP plugin.
Yeah, and let me take a little break in between here real quick.
Sure.
As far as setting up Postmark stuff, until you have to add another domain, another client, another website, you're done on this side of it. Like, you can close out Postmark and never look at it again, and everything be good to go, which is really awesome. When you need to come in and add a new client, a new website on there, you add another sender signature, you can add another server, so you can separate, client A from client B, right? Like Mark said, think of servers just as kind of like folders. This way, each one of your client gets their own API key, and you can more closely monitor what's happening on each one. If you lumped them all together in one server, it would work just fine, but it's going to make it harder down the line if there ever is problems to track things down, or if one bad actor gets in there, it could affect all your clients, right? So it's a good practice to create a folder, a server for each one of those clients, so you get your own API key. And I wanted to mention, there's lots of questions coming in here about like how to set up your account when you have multiple clients and all that in there. And I just want to say that we are going to touch all that a little bit later on. Once we get all this connected and working, we're going to talk kind of at the end here, like strategy of setting this up as a service for your clients.
Cool. Okay, yeah, so we've copied the API token. So let's now go into WordPress, and we're going to add the Postmark native plugin that they have. So I've just done a search in Add Plugins for Active Campaign Postmark, and this is the plugin that we're concerned with here. So we'll just install that, and then we'll activate it. And now with the new way WordPress does plugin installs, we have to refresh the page. So we'll refresh the page. And Postmark,
out of scope for this conversation, but I would love to rant right now. But go ahead.
We don't have time, Carl. We don't have time. So once we've got that plugin installed, you'll notice Postmark doesn't have its own menu item. It's actually under Settings. So if we go into Active Campaign Postmark here, and this is really simple to set up. So you want to enable that service. I think that may be off by default when you first install the plugin. I've had this installed before, but
yes, it is off by default. So you have to turn that on and save before it starts sending through Postmark.
Cool. Yeah. So enable that there. We're going to paste our API key in. The message stream you're going to want to use is outbound. That's what they call the transactional email message stream. Now, if you leave that blank, it will actually default to outbound. And I think that's how it comes by default. You can choose your sender email address. Now, that can be anything you want. You may even want to send all your emails from like do-not-reply@domainname.com if you want. And you can actually use the reply to setting in your form plugin if you're using form submissions as the place that you want the email to come back from. But it can be a good idea to keep the sender email consistent. I always recommend that with our customers, just to keep that sender email the same, because it's validated, the domain name is validated. And we can come on to that later on. We can do a quick demo in WS Form and show you the settings for setting up form submissions and how you can modify that and make that work efficiently.
Now, you said you can use any email there in the sender email, but any email that you have a sender signature for, right? So you have to you had to have connected that domain inside your Postmark account. Like we connected tab smtp.com. We couldn't start sending it from google.com, right? Because that's 100%. Not actually in our sender signature. But if you do the domain route, like we did earlier when we had those two different options, here Mark put test at, you could put Kyle at, Joe at, Bob at, do not reply at, doesn't matter as long as you have that domain connected.
Correct. Yeah. So this part here absolutely has to be the verified domain that we did in that first step. The actual first part of that email address can be anything you want because we use the domain name validation. We didn't use the individual email. Below that, you've got for sender email. And what that will do is that will ensure that every email that's sent always comes from that email address. So if you're setting this up for a client, that might be a good thing to check, because it will just make sure emails go through. If you're a bit more advanced and you want to send emails from different email addresses, maybe you've got like support, sales, whatever it may be, you would want to switch that off. But so that's entirely up to you whether you want to use that feature. The other options here is false emails to be sent as HTML. Most emails are sent as HTML nowadays. It's pretty rare that you're going to send a plain text email, but that's up to you if you want to enable that or not. Tracking opens and links. Now, what that will do is when the email is eventually sent from Postmark to the recipient, is it will change any links to actually a Postmark URL, which enables them to track whether a link has been clicked on or not. And then you can look in Postmark to see click statistics and open statistics. So if you don't want to enable that, you can just disable those two features there. And then they've also got an enable log feature at the bottom. I usually just switch that off. If you don't want to give them your data, you can just switch that data off at the bottom. So it's pretty straightforward. Just enable it, put the API key in, message stream you would leave as outbound, which is your transactional email, choose your sender email address, and then hit that save changes at the bottom.
I know we had to explain each one of these as we were going through, but literally when I set this up on a new site, I go to this screen, paste in the API key, type in the email address, hit save, and I'm done. It's done. It's literally a 10-second job.
Yeah, super easy. And then once you've done that, you can then send your test email. So all you got to do is just put in the recipient address at the top. So I'll send one to myself, and then just hit send test email, and there you go, test sent. That is it, done. I'm not going to open up my email on here because my computer will slow down. I've got so many emails, but that's how simple that is. So now Postmark has basically plugged into that WP mail function and is now going to handle all the email for you. So it's no longer sending email directly to the recipient. It's now going to send it to the Postmark service. Postmark's going to bundle that email up and all the goodness that it needs, and then send that on to the recipient. So that's going to handle all the transactional emails from WordPress that you normally get. So registration, adding a new user, plugin update emails, core update emails, all that's going to go through this as well. And then any form submissions that you make are going to go through this service too. So there's nothing else that you need to do. It just kind of plugs in and off it goes.
Would this be a good time to jump in and answer a few of these questions that are coming in? Because we have some like right around this right here. Okay, let me scroll back here. This is one we were looking at yesterday. Bobby asked, can you set a max sends per server so one client volume doesn't affect the other? As far as I could tell yesterday when we were looking at this with Postmark, there wasn't a way to limit it on a server by server account.
Yeah, there was no cap on it. So I think the cap is basically down to which package you're using. So if you're on the free plan, once you hit 100 emails, that's it. It's going to stop. You're going to have to wait for the next month to get your next quota. With the actual price plans, I think it will probably just reach a cap and then stop. Other services like Amazon SES, that one you've got to be a little bit more careful of, because it'll just go.
You just have a credit card on file at that point.
Yeah, you'll get a bill at the end. But they do impose limits on Amazon. So usually, I forget what the limits are. I use Amazon SES myself just because it gives me a little bit more flexibility. But they do have caps as well, because obviously they do not want. I mean, none of these companies want their systems to be used for spam.
Yeah.
It's not in their favor for them to have to do that, because it will, like, some of the comments have said it will blacklist the IP, and they don't want that to happen. So each of these is going to have different ways of working, but usually it's going to be a cap based upon the package you're using.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Allison asked here about, for the tracking, do cookie policies need updating? I would imagine so. If you're connecting all this through Postmark and emails are going through, your privacy policy might need to be updated, but that'd be a great question for the folks at Termageddon.
Yeah, we need Hans and Donata here right now.
My default is just always say yes.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't say cookie policies, because this doesn't usually involve cookies. This is actually tracking done within the email itself. So usually with the click tracking, what happens is the links in the email get changed to a Postmark link. So you're actually linked to Postmark, and then Postmark sends you on to where it should have gone originally. So yeah, you are capturing information about people by doing that. I'm not a legal expert, but I would say yes, your policies do need updating. Is it around cookies? I would say probably not. It's more just kind of tracking and logging information about people. I think most of this data is fairly anonymous, but it's going to be tied to an email address. So
Yeah, I mean,
somewhere it's hooked up.
as soon as you put in a contact form and it has
Yeah.
their name and email and all that, you're collecting all the PII. So
Yeah,
I would say yes, almost definitely you're going to have to update your privacy policy, but that's not Postmark. That's just you're sending emails to a service.
Yeah.
You're going to have to do that.
Sign up for Termageddon and check the box that says, yeah, I'm doing that.
There you go. Simon asked, and I know we covered this several times, but there's just been so much confusion on this. I want to reiterate it again. He said, I use an SMTP plugin, but what is the primary benefit for using a service as well? So you want to reiterate that one for us, Mark?
Yeah, so if you're using an SMTP plugin, that's only part of the puzzle. Your SMTP is going to be connecting to something. Now that you may be connecting it directly to your Gmail account, for example, which just gives you an efficient way of getting email into your Gmail inbox. But most of the time you're going to use an SMTP service, which is going to give you the benefit of the improved deliverability. It's going to give you logins, it's going to give you better error checking, all of the above. So yeah, just bear in mind that there are two parts to this. If you are connecting your SMTP plugin to Gmail, which it sounds like maybe Simon's doing something like that and not actually using a service, Gmail is actually effectively your SMTP gateway by doing that. So that is another way that you can do it. But things
I don't know exactly what Google's terms are on that, but I would be weary if you have a big e-commerce store or something and sending tons of emails using Gmail as your SMTP provider, because if you just schedule a bunch of emails through your inbox to all go out at one time, that's a red flag for Google that you're doing spam. Mm-hmm. So I would be nervous because I'm going to use the word hack, even though you're not hacking, but you're kind of like hacking into the Gmail services to use it as an SMTP provider. That's not what it was intended for. So I would be nervous if you start sending a lot of emails through that then they could then shut down your entire email address, right? Mm-hmm. So now your correspondence with your clients don't work. So for me, the price of what an SMTP service costs and the fact that this is so important for my business to function, $10, $15 a month, whatever this is well worth it to pay to not use something that could end up costing me a lot in the long run.
Yeah. And you'll notice in Postmark that they have other channels there. So you've got like a broadcast channel, I think it's called. So if you were using an email marketing plugin, then you would probably want to push that through a broadcast plugin, not a transactional email thing. So Postmark and Mailgun, these services are designed for sending that bulk email out.
Right. And so we had a question on that as well. Would it be a good idea to have a separate SMTP accounts for transactional and marketing if you're using Fluent CRM or Groundhog? So like Mark was just saying, a lot of these services have different setups for if it's transactional or marketing, and I'm sure a lot of that has to do with like the rate limits and all those kinds of things. And Allison asked on here too, how does Postmark know this is transactional? Because when we set up everything on our account, we clicked the little radio button that said outbound or whatever for us to be sending transactional emails.
Yeah. So there is trust involved, but you're telling it that you want to use that outbound message stream.
Right. Matthew said he had no idea you could use any email as long as it's at the registered domain at Postmark. Yes, you are understanding that correctly. As long as you've verified that domain, you can type in a bunch of gibberish as long as it's at that domain and it will go through. You just want to be careful that there are settings inside Postmark. I don't know if you want to flip back into Postmark to look at it while we're just on that subject. If we go back into our sender signatures and we edit the one that we have there, not in the DNS settings, I don't think. I think when you go back.
Yeah.
So if you add a signature, click that add signature button. No, back one. Sorry. Now I'm trying to direct traffic.
Oh, down here. Yeah.
Click that one. So that's going to add a specific sender signature for this account. But when you do that, you can add a reply to email address. So if you wanted like a website at whatever your domain is, just as like a generic, you don't actually have an inbox for that. It's just so you know this came from your transactional email. You could use that and then go in here and specify if somebody replies to that, where does it need to go? And then you could have it go to your email address. So you can do all that here through the sender signature inside Postmark. All right. Let's see. I know we were kind of getting to this too, but Gigi asked here if clients should have their own Postmark account. I think that's totally up to how you want to do it. I'll tell you, I mean, we're kind of to the point talking about doing this as a service, right, Mark? Go ahead and let anything out of the demo.
Yeah. I want to just show the options when you're sending emails with the form plugin, just to give people an idea on
right.
stuff. But we can do that afterwards. That's fine.
Okay. Then I'll tackle this while we got it on the screen. So for me, I think this is not something most of my clients want to handle or figure out on their own, right? Because they could always circumvent my systems. Let's say I really made them mad and I screwed them over and now they want to disconnect from me. Even if their account's through my stuff, they could just set up their own, change the record out, and have complete control over it. So I'm not locking them into anything. That's when I worry about clients being in my account. But Postmark is set up for you to be able to add multiple domains, multiple servers, which are kind of like those folders we talked about earlier. So why I really gravitated towards Postmark here is because it's so easy for me to add all my clients in here. When I add a new client, I just come in here, add the new sender signature, verify the domain, the DNS records, and then I'm good to go. So for me, I put them all inside my Postmark account. That way I can manage it all. Now, most of mine are they're not e-commerce sites. So I'm not sending tons of emails. So I'm not having to keep track of every penny on this. If your clients are sending a lot of emails, they have e-commerce or they have a membership platform that people are in and out of all the time, or a learning management system that sends lots of emails, right? Then maybe you say, hey, this is kind of one of those cases where it's going to be hard for me to guess how many emails these people are going to use every month. Maybe you set them up with their own account, or maybe you allocate them so many emails on your end, even though you can't really limit that here inside of Postmark itself. But for me, I put them all in my account because it's just easier for me to manage all that for them. And I know my clients don't want to mess with it.
Yep. I do the same with Amazon SES. You can set up individual accounts for each user. It's a lot more difficult than this, but it's possible. And one of the advantages of having those separate accounts and separate API keys is if one of your clients does get hacked, and you've got 100,000 emails going through it, you can isolate that, switch that one off. So by having individual API keys, you can isolate issues like that and not have it affect your other clients.
Right. And I know we had questions earlier about kind of the pricing on it. So for me, I have enough margin in my care plan packages that I'm not charging extra for this service. But I know what it's like. I think somebody mentioned this earlier. Like we start adding in all of these things, right? We add in this, we add in that, we add in this, and all of a sudden you're paying for a bunch of stuff. Clients can go out on the open market and buy all this stuff themselves for about $10 a month. That's what it's going to cost them. Then they're going to have to figure out how to use it and connect it and manage it and reminder to update their credit card and all those kinds of things they don't want to do with this, right? So the fact that you could come in at $5 a month and share this account among 20 or 30 clients, you would be printing money at that point, and your clients getting it for half off of what they could get on the open market. So I think this is a pretty easy add-on. Like for me, I just decided I'm rolling this into my care plan because I have enough margin in there. If you feel like your margins are where they need to be already and you need to up the price, I mean, $2 a month if you have a handful of clients and you'd be profitable using one of these services. It's just not going to take very much, right?
And these prices here are per account. This is your Postmark account. This is not per client, not per server. So yeah, like you say, if you're only sending 1,000 emails a month across all of your clients, then you're looking at $15, $20 a month to handle everything.
Yep, exactly. And we just had a question here from Matt saying, what do you do if they leave your website care plan though? Actually going through this right now with a client. They're having somebody redesign their website and they want to end services with me. So I've just let them know I have a Airtable base with all my client records in it to say, here's all the services I have connected. So I just let them know, hey, here's where your domain's registered. I have the hosting right now, so you need to migrate the hosting. I also have your SMTP provider, so you're going to have to sign up with a new SMTP provider. So I just give them that list based off of the records that I have on my end, and then they can connect their own. So if you don't want to hassle with that, you can get them all set up on their own account. But for me, I just don't think most clients want to deal with this. I think that's kind of part of the service I'm providing them, is they don't have to really mess with this or think about it,
Yeah. I think one of the other things we mentioned, Carl, when we were discussing this was just make sure in your maintenance agreement contract, whatever it will be called, just make sure that you've got some provision in there in that if they do start sending a bunch of emails, that you've got a provision in there to be able to charge them for that.
Right. Yeah. So even though we can't with Postmark now, maybe we need to look into that and maybe somebody will do the research for us on this. Some of the other SendGrid or Mailgun or Amazon, maybe there are ways to limit accounts, one domain at a time, which would be great. So you could say, hey, included in your care plan is up to 200 emails a month or whatever, right? And then you'd get an alert whenever they were getting to that number. For me, it's just not been a problem because I'm not doing sites that have that many emails on them anyways. So I've never run into that issue, but I would at least have that in your contract. So if something goes haywire and all of a sudden a client sends out 30,000 emails, you can point back to the contract and let them know what's going on with that.
Yep.
Sweet. Well, I think we're caught up on a lot of these questions here. So let's talk about the next part of this demo here where you wanted to show us kind of connecting everything with the form plugin.
Yeah, sure. This shouldn't take long. It's just to kind of show you some of the best settings for a form plugin. Now, obviously, I'm going to show WS Form, but the same applies to any other form plugin that you're using. So let's just create a Contact Us form quickly, and I'll show you how this works. Okay, so in WS Form, when you send an email, an email is actually an action. So I'm going to go up to Actions here. And on the right-hand side here, we've got a Send Email action. Now, you can actually send multiple emails with WS Form on a single form submission. So I'm just going to show you one, just so you can see how this works. So we'll click on the settings there. I'm going to open this up just to make it a bit bigger so you can see it. Let me zoom in so it's easier to read. And so these are the different settings that you have on a send email action. First of all, you've got your from email address. So your from email address is going to need to be an email under the verified domain name that you have set up. So that may be do not reply at, in this case, tab smtp.com, or it could be sales at or service at, whatever you want that to be, but it's got to be from that domain name. If you use an email address that is something other than that verified domain, it's probably not going to send. So let's just say, for example, you wanted to send an email that looks like it's coming from the person that filled out the form, and you want to be able to hit reply on that. You still need that from address to be your verified domain name. And what you will actually do is use the reply to email address to put in the email address of the user that filled out the form. So for argument's sake, if that were in WS Form field ID 3, for example, we would just very simply put hash field 3. And your form plugin will probably have another way of doing that. But that's where you want to put the email address that you want the reply to go to if you hit reply. So that's just a nice way of making it easier for you to, in your email package, just to hit reply and it goes back to the person that sent it. So that's your from email address. The from display name can be anything you want. So that could be your site name. In WS Form, we default that to the blog name. So that's the setting that's under settings general site name. It'll inject that in there, but you can make that anything that you want. And then under your to addresses, your to address is going to be usually your email address that you want it to go to, or it's going to be an email to the person filling out that form as an email acknowledgement. So,
or it could be a combination of all of those because you can have multiple to emails.
Yeah. So if you want to send the same email to multiple people, you can actually do that in WS Form here by setting multiple to addresses. You can even do it as a CC or a BCC address in WS Form as well if you want to. Or you can create another send email action and actually send 2 independent emails that have different content if you want to. Again, display name can be anything you want. So these two are pretty flexible. We default it to the blog admin email address, but you could easily put hash field, a number, and that will then go to whichever email address has been entered into that field. So that's dynamic. In WS Form, we also have a cool feature called round robin as well. So if you wanted to send, I don't know, tab smtp.com. So let's say we had sales and we had support, and maybe we have service as well. You can actually enable round robin, and you can actually have those emails sent to those different people at equal times. So sales will get a third, support will get a third, service will get a third, and you can actually adjust that round robin percentage here as well.
That's
But
great. If you
anyway,
have multiple salespeople and they're whining about who gets the leads from the website, say, hey, everybody's going to get them equally, right?
Yeah, you can make somebody happier by giving them a higher percentage. So those are the general settings that you want to set in there. Now on the WS Form knowledge base site, there is actually an article, and we can probably put a link to that in the article that we've got on the admin bar website that gives you a summary of this, just so you can recap and go into that and look into that further. Now the other thing to bear in mind is, like we said earlier on, the SMTP service, the SMTP plugin are those two key pieces that you need to get the email to where you want it to be, but also consider your email content as well. So you don't want to use any flag words. Like Carl was saying, don't put roulette or casino in your email content, because it's probably going to get picked up by...
Let's keep your emails PG too, because
yeah.
The more R and X rated these get, the more likely they are to get blocked.
Yeah, don't put filth in your emails, people.
Yeah.
Just keep it clean. Keep it clean. Yeah, so that's that. That's just what I wanted to quickly show, just to give people an idea that as well as setting all that up, you've got to make sure that you're sending from and to, and you've got all your settings correct.
Well, I didn't know if you saw the screen, but we had lots of people bragging about WS Forms on here. Even people saying they're switching from the Gravity Forms over to WS Form, which is awesome. Allison said she's never heard of Round Robin before. That is a feature that I've not seen in too many form plugins. What do you see clients using that for? I'm just curious now.
Yeah, it's usually like if they've got a sales team, so they'll have Mark, Kyle, and Bob, and they want to be equally sent sales leads from their sales lead form. By using Round Robin, you can use that to equally send them emails. Or if you've got somebody that maybe is full-time and two people that are part-time, you can do 50%, 25, 25, whatever you want to do. And WS Form just handles that in the background automatically for you and just distributes those inquiries as you want them to be distributed.
That's one of 9,000 awesome unique features inside WS Form too. So
yeah, but that's the thing about WS Form is it's just full of functionality that you would otherwise have to write custom code for, or write some JavaScript for, or some PHP for. It's pretty much all built in. But that's for another day.
There you go. All right. Well, I'm going to tackle. I want to go over a few of these questions that people submitted.
Sure.
As they were registering for the webinar. If you guys have more questions now, put them in the chat. We tried to cover some of these as we were going, as they made sense to. Some of these we're going to reiterate here, but I think they're worth reiterating because they've come up so many times. So again, we had gotten asked about the benefits of using a service like Mailgun as opposed to using just an SMTP plugin. You got to have both. The plugin only connects to a service, right? So if you don't think you're using an SMTP service, you're probably using something that's free, like Gmail or something, through an SMTP plugin, but you need both there, right?
Yeah.
Cheryl had asked, are there any specific DMARC records to allow the WordPress emails to go through? So we had to verify with that DKIM record.
Yeah, DMARC is also a feature in Postmark 2, so you can actually sign up for that. They actually have a monitoring service, a DMARC monitoring service, which if somebody is sending an email under your domain name, it will actually pick that up and report that to you, which is pretty cool. So again, we're not going to go into DKIM, DMARC, and SPF and all this kind of stuff in this particular call. It's quite involved, but essentially all those different protocols and authentication methods are vital to getting your email through to the other end efficiently. So most of these SMTP services set that up for you. And it's a lot easier than it used to be, that you had to add like 6 different DNS records. Now it's a lot easier. So yeah, if you see it there, enable it because it will help get your email across to where it needs to be.
Yeah, and when you do DMARC records, you can put in there where you want the reporting set to, but if you don't use a service that does the reporting for you, the emails you get will make almost no sense to you, because it's just jumbly computer language. Postmark, I've signed up for theirs. It's free. It's simple to use. They send you like a weekly report that shows all the different services that sent emails on your behalf. So you can whiz through that email real quick and say, yes, that was me. That was me. That was, whoa, I don't know what this is. And then you can go investigate it. But it's a free service through Postmark. That's definitely great. Anthony asked, connecting WP Mail with Gmail API, good or bad idea? So we did talk about that a little bit earlier. It's definitely possible. Most of the SMTP plugins like Fluent, will allow you to connect directly to your Gmail account, but Gmail isn't necessarily built to do that. So I would be a little bit nervous if this was my client's livelihood that I'm running through a service that wasn't really built for this, that could easily get flagged and taken down. So do you feel similar to me on that?
Yeah, and just bear in mind as well that Gmail are aware that this is going on, so they've actually stopped the ability to use Gmail as an SMTP gateway. You have to connect through their OAuth. So OAuth is when you kind of click connect, it takes you off to Google, you put your login and password in, and then it brings you back to your service again. So they're getting a little bit stricter on it, because I think they're seeing a lot of people use it in the ways that we're describing. So my recommendation is to use a separate SMTP service and don't route it through Gmail.
Edward asks, is it possible to use SMTP on WordPress without using a third-party plugin? I don't know if we're counting plugins and we just don't want too many plugins in there, or what the idea is.
Yeah, no, you're going to need an SMTP plugin to connect to the service. There's no way of. I mean, you can hand code it if you like.
Yeah,
I've actually done that on our WS Form demo server, because we use InstaWP and they don't allow sending emails. So I just wrote a little script that sends it off to Amazon. But if you don't want to sit there coding PHP to get it working, then highly recommend the SMTP plugins. You're basically going to need a plugin to get it connected to the service.
Yeah, and it shouldn't. I've never had a problem with the ones I've used, so it shouldn't be a big deal there.
I've never seen them cause like a performance issue or anything like that. They're so minuscule.
Yeah. Donald asked, should we use a subdomain for SMTP so our domain won't get affected with a bad reputation?
I've never had to do that. I've found that these, I mean, it's usually the IP address that's going to get blocked with these SMTP providers. Again, I've never had that happen to me. I've never seen a need to add a subdomain, and I think it looks better as well if the email comes from your domain name and not a subdomain. So just keep it clean. I wouldn't see a need to do that. Yeah,
and I mean, the only reason that might be a concern if you're sending emails that people didn't ask for, right? So if you're sending emails people aren't expecting to get, I've watched my wife do this. She signs up for something, right? And then she decides she doesn't want emails anymore. So she starts marking it as spam. I'm like, but you signed up for that. You can't mark it as spam now. But if you start sending people emails that they don't think they want, they're going to hit spam on it, right? So then you might have the problem of that reputation issue if people are spamming your thing a lot. But in this case, we're talking about form submissions, password resets, receipts for purchases made, whatever. These are emails people are expecting to get. The likelihood of people hitting mark this email as spam is very low, as long as you're not abusing it, right? If you're using this transactional service to send out spammy marketing emails, then I would probably use a subdomain. I would not do that, but
probably not use your domain. Use something else, but don't do that.
Use I think my domain. Spoof his email and then do it.
Just block me. Yeah, I think my wife single-handedly has enabled every shopping site in the world to spam people, because she never deletes anything.
That gives me anxiety. We had another question about best practices. Most of my clients are still using Gmail accounts and not professional email. And I think this is one of the huge things that was like an eye-opener for me with Postmark was, as long as your client has a domain, which I'm guessing if they have a website, they have a domain, they don't have to have any kind of email service connected with that domain to use a, sales at whatever their domain is for transactional emails through Postmark. As long as you verify that domain, you don't have to have a real inbox, right? You can make the reply to address to their Gmail address. You can have the form submit to their Gmail address. Everything's fine. They don't have to buy an email service for this. They can just connect the domain.
Your inbox is completely separate from the process we showed you here. That's purely for where that email's. You're like one of your customers, one of your clients, one of your end users. So it can be completely separate.
There you go. Dave asked how to test if things are working correctly. Let's pull up that WP install you have there. We showed a second ago how to send the test email. When you get the test email, it's just an email from Postmark that says like, this is a test email from Postmark. So there's nothing to really show there, but you can always send that test email right there, which is really easy. And then if you go into the status tab up here in the Postmark plugin, No, back where you were in the
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, this one. Yeah.
tab.
Yep.
Oh, you didn't mark the logs on. That's right. So in the general tab right there, if you go back to the general tab, and if you turn that log send attempts on, maybe send a test email real quick just so we can show people.
Yeah.
You already got it in there. Perfect. Test.
We'll do another one as well.
There you go. Now, if you go into the logs, you might have to refresh it.
Yeah. There we go.
There you go. It'll show you the logs. If it says error code 0, that means there was no error on it. It'll show you where those emails are sent to. So I do enable this logging. Maybe I need to go back and rethink, make sure that I'm got all that correct in my privacy policy. But I do log all those because it's so easy. If a client tells me, hey, I'm not getting emails or whatever, I can go into the screen real quick and see exactly what's going on. Now, inside the Postmark website itself in your account, you get a much more detailed look at all these things. It'll show you sent, received, like every step this email went through to get to where it's going. You have detailed logs on that. But for me, this little back end of the website thing has been really easy.
And that's a really nice feature of this plugin, because some of the kind of commercial SMTP plugins, you have to pay to get that functionality. So the fact that this is included in the native plugin is really helpful.
Excellent. Dave also asked, if I set up SMTP once, will it work across my site for things like transactional emails and whatever provider I go with automatically?
Yes, it will. Yeah. So once you've got this set up for sending email from a form, for example, it's also going to work for all the other transactional emails from WordPress, such as core updates, plugin updates, error notifications, everything else. So the WP Mail function is what's called a pluggable function, which enables these plugins to plug into that, take over its functionality, and then it just handles everything for you.
Yep. Once you install and activate one of these SMTP plugins and everything's connected properly, it's essentially going to hijack the default way of doing it. Now everything's going to go through this system. So once you plug and play that, you're good to go. All right, a couple of questions here live that I start, and if anybody's got a few more, we got a couple more minutes to answer questions, and I won't take up too much more of Mark's time. I did put a little banner across the screen. You can see there, theadminbar.com/SMTP. That's the blog post Mark put together that goes along with this webinar. Basically, everything we covered except for the Q&As are in this post, and more stuff that we didn't cover here, like pricing from all the different providers, what's included, all that kind of information. So that post has everything you need and more, and it will also have this video in it eventually. All right. We got asked, what SMTP service do you suggest? Me personally, I like Postmark because of the reasons we outlined here. Mailgun's worked great for me in the past. I've used SendGrid, and that's been fine. Mark says he uses Amazon SES, but you need to be a little bit more technical to do that.
More of a nerd. But yeah, I've been really impressed with the Postmark one. I've got experience of using Mailgun and SendGrid. I mean, they're all pretty much the same. But I like the way this Postmark one is set up.
There you go. Let's see. Click and repeat to make sure I understood. This is all completely separate from marketing/promotional emails. Yep. You're using the domain, and you're giving Postmark or whatever SMTP provider permission to send email from your domain, but it's not actually connected to your inbox where you're conversing with people. It's not connected with your email marketing where you're sending out promotional emails. Those just all happen to be using the same domain, right? But it's completely separate from those. It's not connected into them. They're completely separate services. You're just authenticating different places to be able to use your domain, essentially. So your SMTP provider gets your authentication to be able to send from your domain. I think there's maybe some confusion there, and I know I had confusion on this, like thinking that your website email was one thing, but it's really your domain is one thing, and lots of things can connect to that and send on your behalf, right? So your G Suite account that you set up all your emails from is one thing connected to your domain. Your MailChimp account is another thing you've connected to your domain and gave authorization for it to send emails through. And now the SMTP is just another service you're connecting to your domain and saying, yes, it's totally fine if you send emails on my behalf. All right. Question, is there a way to use the Postmark email templates for WordPress delivery? That is a good question that I don't know the answer to. And I know you're fairly new to Postmark. So
That I don't know, unfortunately.
All right. Would it be better to use Fluent SMTP and have a failover? That is one thing that I know is in Fluent SMTP. If whatever you set up as your default SMTP provider, if that fails, you can set up a backup, and then it will try to go through the backup. So that's one of the benefits to having something like Fluent that connects to multiple SMTP providers instead of something like Postmark that's only going to connect to their one service.
Yeah, you're going to find these premium SMTP plugins are really feature rich. So they do a lot more than the native plugins do. The native plugins do enough to get you going, do the basic login, but the likes of Fluent SMTP, WP, SMTP Mail, and things like that, those have a lot more functionality built into them. So yeah, I've never used a failover, to be honest. I've never had a need for it. It's usually been pretty efficient, but it's a great idea. If you've got a mission critical site, then yeah.
Yep, and I think that's the thing. I come from this bias of like I'm doing mostly brochure, mom and pop type websites that like even if an email didn't make it through, it's probably not the end of the world. But I just have so little. I had a lot of problems when I wasn't using an SMTP provider. Once I switched over to Postmark, I can't think of a time when an email failed to go through. It's very, very reliable.
Yeah, that's one of the
not mission critical too. You know, like nobody's going to die if an email doesn't go through.
Yeah, and also one advantage of using WS Form Lite, if you are using a Lite edition, is we do include logging of submissions. So some form plugins, the Lite edition, the free edition, doesn't actually log any outgoing forms or incoming form data. WS Form logs every submission. So if you do have problems with your email, you can go into that log and see everything anyway. So you've got a backup of it. You can export it as a CSV file. We even have an action rerun icon, which when your email's back up and running, you can click that and it will then send that email again.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple more questions here. This one I don't know a lot about, but if a client got burned from a bad reputation due to the person they bought the site from, would it be best for them to use a dedicated IP?
For their email sending? I mean, yeah, they could. I mean, if they had a bad reputation, the problem there is that you can get blacklisted on lists. So you've got to kind of convince those services that you're no longer going to do bad stuff. And you're probably going to want to change your IP address. And probably the easiest way of doing that would be to change SMTP providers. They would give you a different IP address. But the domain itself can actually get blacklisted too. And it can be a bit of a pain to get that back up and running. I've had to do that a few times with clients in the past because they've done bad stuff. And it's just a case of, you know, you have to convince them through communication like email and say, we'll be good. And if you're lucky, you'll get removed from that list. So it's a bit of a pain, but it is possible to do that. A dedicated IP in that instance probably isn't going to help you. Because whether you're using a shared IP or a dedicated IP, you can get blacklisted in exactly the same way with a domain name.
Right. Is Google Postmaster Tools still useful? I've never even heard of Google Postmaster Tools, so I couldn't answer this.
Yeah, me either.
Okay.
Never heard of it.
There
One
we go.
of many hundreds of products they have that you've never heard of.
I know. Is it in the Google graveyard? I have no idea.
It might be.
Let's see here. Small company under 1,000 emails a month. Is it best to use G Suite or move to an SMTP service? For the reasons we talked about here, I would recommend using an SMTP service because it was built to do this. It's like purposely built to send these kind of emails, and G Suite was meant for you to correspond with people. So
yeah.
While
for 1,000 emails a month, you can use Postmark for free, you know, or one of the others for free. Like Mailgun, I think is 5,000 free per month. So set it up, forget about it, and you'll be good to go.
Yep, absolutely. So a lot of these have generous free offerings. If you don't have a bunch of emails, I would still just prefer to use something that was made for this that's not going to potentially get you shut down. Do you still need SMTP if you're using an Elementor Pro form?
Yes, you do. Yeah, any form plugin, doesn't matter which form plugin you're using, they're all going to route through the processes we showed in this presentation, and you're going to want to use an SMTP service to get the email sent out effectively.
Yep. So it doesn't matter what form plugin you're using or you know, where your website's hosted or any of those things are kind of inconsequential here. This is an SMTP is just going to override WordPress's default way of sending email, which, as we kind of talked about at the beginning of this call, works but doesn't work reliably, and especially now as everybody's inbox, everybody's email provider has gotten more strict about not letting emails through that aren't formatted correctly, that don't have all the proper headers and all that in it. The default way WordPress sends emails doesn't have all that information. So chances are it's not going to get delivered, or if it does get delivered, it's going to end up in somebody's spam folder. So just easier to use a real provider here. All right, there we go. I think that's all of them. That's all of them we're going to take anyways.
Yeah.
You know,
hopefully that was helpful.
For anybody who hasn't hosted a webinar for an hour, I tell you, when you get done with this, you need a break for about 2 hours. I don't know why. It's just sitting here talking, but you feel exhausted afterwards. So I think I've hit my limit for today. But excellent. So I got the link there to that post. Like I said, if you need a refresher on any of this and don't want to go through an hour's worth of video, everything is in written form. Mark took screenshots of every screen in Postmark and annotated with like, here's where you click. They even all have alt tags that explain the whole thing. So you are all set up here. He went way out of his way to really put together a great presentation here. I saw lots of good comments about this, and this is exactly what they needed. So I'm really glad to hear that. That's what I was hoping for. I really do think this is going to help a ton of people. Rob asked for a coupon code for WS Form. I think there's a banner across your website right now.
Yeah.
20% off. So if
use that. We're doing a deal with Page Builder Summit right now, 20% off. So you can just look at it right at the top of the site in pink. So it should be easy to see. Some people still miss it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, if you have problems, ping me or Mark. Mark's in the group as well, and we'll definitely get you fixed up. I switched over to WS Form, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago, and I will not be going back to anything else because it is awesome. So like we saw in here, there's just so many features packed into it that either don't exist or are way more complicated other ways. So we need to just do a dedicated WS Form webinar. I actually went through the ones you did with
Nathan.
Yeah. If you look those up, WS Forms on WP Builds, it was like a 6-part series or something of like all the things you could do with WS Form. It's pretty amazing. Now it's like a year or two old at this point too. So
yeah, it's probably more we can add to it. But
yeah, no doubt. Maybe we'll do a condensed version of that. So
yeah, we'll do a whirlwind tour.
There you go. Well, Mark, I really appreciate your help on this, and I appreciate everybody showing up and hanging out. If you would, hit like on this stream and subscribe if you haven't. I saved that to the very end, so I didn't bombard you guys with that, but I would very much appreciate it. So
yeah.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you guys for coming and hanging out. I hope everybody has an awesome weekend. We got a 3-day weekend here in the States, so let's take some extra time off.
Let's do it. Let's have some fun.
There you go. All right. Thanks so much, Mark.
Thanks, Carl.
Bye-bye.